Reborn into her childhood. Serafina chose not to go up the mountain this time, deliberately avoiding the path where she had once met him. She wondered, if she never met him again in this life, would her fate finally be different? Serafina was a concubine's daughter. Her mother died giving birth to her. And she was nearly drowned in a basin right after. But she survived. At 4. Her legitimate sister drove her into a pack of wolves, she still survived. At 7. Her stepmother hung her up and beat her for 4 days and nights before throwing her into the snow to freeze. By sheer chance, she was rescued by the young monk of Cold Mountain Temple. From that day on, Serafina believed it was the Buddha who had answered her prayers, that someone in this world finally loved her. But on the eve of her coming of age, Zenith discovered the affection Serafina held for him. And he decided to send her away. Serafina knelt and begged to stay, she had nowhere else to go, but he remained firm. After she left the mountain, her stepmother dragged her back to the Luna estate and forced her to travel to the northern frontier to fetch medicine for her sister. Serafina refused, so she was beaten and locked in the firewood shed. When Zenith descended the mountain, Serafina thought he had come to save her, but instead, he struck the final blow, ordering her to go fetch the medicine. She went. And she died there. Her resentment lingered long after death, until Serafina inexplicably awoke once more in Cold Mountain Temple. He was the Buddha's chosen disciple. A prince of Q, and his face serene and noble. His presence bathed in the gentle light of flickering candles, emanating divinity itself. Serafina walked to his side and gazed at him quietly. For a moment, the whole world seemed calm and beautiful. Then he opened his eyes, his gaze fell upon her. Distant and cold, but dully crippled through her heart. Ever since Zenith learned of her feelings, he had never looked at her kindly again. When he first took her in, he'd promised, "I will care for her well. No one shall ever harm her." But now, "You've returned safely," he said inferiorly. "You must have succeeded in getting the medicine for your sister. For that, you may stay in the temple. But do not harbor improper thoughts again. Should such thoughts arise, you will leave this place forever." Though she was already dead, Serafina still felt her heart ache. She knelt and vowed softly, "Seeing your brother, you can rest assured, I will not cling to you again." After all, she was already dead. She didn't even know when she would fade away completely. As she turned to leave, Zenith called her back. From his sleeve, he took out a small box of incense. "Your sister heard you went to seek medicine for her. She worries you haven't been sleeping well, so she prepared this fine tranquil incense," he said, pressing it into her hands before she could refuse. That night, Serafina didn't want to use the incense her sister sent, yet Zenith appeared again, silently watching as she lit it. The moment the flame touched the powder, a strange, cloyingly sweet scent filled the air. Heat surged through her body. She lost control, throwing her arms around Zenith. "What are you doing?" In the next instant, she was flung to the floor. When she looked up, she met his eyes filled with disgust. The sight jolted her back to her senses. "I didn't mean to," she gasped. "There's something wrong with the incense." It wasn't tranquil incense. It was laced with aphrodisiac. Zenith didn't believe her. His voice was as cold as a blade. "You are shameless. You still haven't given up those filthy thoughts." He ordered her to kneel in the main hall for a full day and night. Serafina had no choice but to obey. The temple wind slowly cooled the fever in her body. Alone before the altar, gazing at the eternal lamp and the ancestral tablets, a bitter sorrow welled up within her. She was a concubine's daughter, born of a maid, despised by everyone since birth. Zenith was the only one who had ever been kind to her, and now even he despised her. Perhaps from this moment on, no one would ever remember her again. Then, a sudden rush of icy water forced its way into her nose and mouth. Serafina's mind exploded in pain. She wasn't in the underworld. She was back in that cursed water basin. She had been reborn into the very moment of her birth, when her stepmother Maleficent tried to drown her. Instinct screamed for survival. Her tiny legs kicked, her little fists flailed, and from her throat came a piercing, desperate wail. "Wah!" The cry was shrill and fierce, echoing through the room. Perhaps fate wasn't ready to end her yet, or perhaps the commotion was simply too loud. An old servant passing by hesitated, then shouted, "Madam! Madam!" The young miss is crying so hard. Moments later, hurried footsteps approached. Her father, Alden, had just returned. "What's going on?" he demanded, frowning at the sight of the baby thrashing in the basin. Maleficent's hand trembled as she quickly lifted Seraphina out, forcing a smile. "Master, you're back. It's nothing, just washing the baby." She was fussy. Seraphina's tiny body was soaked, her face pale and purple, breath coming in faint sobs. Alden glanced at her once, said nothing, only waved dismissively. "Noisy." Then he turned and left. Maleficent glared venomously at the infant, but, with Alden still nearby, didn't dare press her under again. Seraphina had survived barely, but she knew this was only the beginning. At 4, she endured again. Her legitimate sister, Luna, called her a bastard and lured her into the back mountain to play. It was a trap. Luna pushed her into a ravine where wolves roamed. Seraphina tumbled down, bruised and aching, her heart pounding as the howls drew near. But she didn't panic. The memory of being chased by wolves in her past life burned in her mind. She rolled and crawled into a narrow crack between stones, gripping a sharp rock she had hidden beforehand. The wolves came, green eyes gleaming. Seraphina banged the rock hard against the wall. Clang. Clang. A piercing sound split the air. Startled, the wolves hesitated. She seized the chance, hurling dirt and stones at them, screaming as loud as she could. Maybe the noise annoyed them, or maybe they sensed this prey was too troublesome. With a few low growls, the wolves slowly backed away. Seraphina collapsed in the crevice, drenched in cold sweat. By 7, she faced another trial. Her stepmother accused her of stealing and had her strung up in the woodshed, beaten for 4 days and nights. Each lash burned through her flesh, white-hot agony searing her bones. Seraphina bit her lip until blood filled her mouth, never once begging for mercy. Only one thought blazed in her mind. Endure it. This time, I will not go up the mountain. I will not go to Cold Mountain Temple. I will never see Zenith again. On the 4th night, she was thrown into the courtyard snow like a rag doll. The cold seeped into her marrow. She thought she would die again. That the herb lore she'd secretly learned in the temple came rushing back. With trembling, frost-bitten fingers, she dug at the wall's base until her nails tore and bled, finally finding a few frozen roots. She shoved them into her mouth, chewing the bitter, astringent fibers until a faint warmth trickled down her throat, barely keeping her alive. At dawn, a hunched figure passed by Eudora, the lowest-ranking washerwoman of the household. She spotted the small body half buried in the snow and gasped, rushing over to check if the child was still breathing. "Good heavens! She's still breathing!" Eudora exclaimed in shock and fear, quickly glancing around to ensure no one was watching. Without hesitation, she stripped off her old, tattered cotton coat and wrapped it around Seraphina, struggling to lift her up. Looking at the near lifeless, frost-bitten child in her arms, she sighed deeply. "Poor thing. Come with me. We'll head to the old temple south of the city. It's better than freezing to death here." With Seraphina cradled in her arms, Eudora staggered towards the gate of the estate, taking uneven steps. As they passed a fork in the road, Seraphina barely managed to open her heavy eyelids. One path led up the mountain, winding its way to the misty peak, the direction of Han Mountain Temple, where Zenith resided. In her past life, she had been abandoned there, only to be rescued by Zenith. This time, Seraphina mustered the last of her strength. Gripping Eudora's coat tightly, with her small hand, she pointed towards the opposite path, a muddy road leading down the mountain to the dilapidated temple, far from the direction of Han Mountain Temple. Her gaze was colder and more resolute than ever. Zenith? In this lifetime, they would never meet again. The southern city's broken-down temple had no insulation, with the roof partially collapsed. The straw piled on the floor was more like a bed of rocks, stiff and uncomfortable. The meals? Mostly coarse flatbreads and watery porridge that Eudora had earned by washing and mending clothes, with the occasional scraps from kind-hearted passers-by. But to Serafina, this place was 100 times better than the opulent mansion of the Luna family. At least here, no one hit her. No one called her a bastard. She knew she couldn't just live off Eudora's kind. While Eudora washed clothes, Serafina helped fetch water, hang the laundry, and hand over things. Her small hands, red and cracked from the cold, never complained of the pain. Her stitching was so neat and fine that even Eudora was surprised. "Girl, your hands are so skillful. You don't seem like a child doing this." Serafina just smiled. In her past life, at the Buddhist temple, she had done these chores many times. Just when things seemed to be stabilizing, trouble arrived. One day, a woman, heading fulfilled a woman, dressed in a slightly worn silk coat and holding her chin high, walked into the broken temple, pinching her nose. Serafina instantly recognized her Hilda, a loyal servant of her stepmother. Maleficent. Hilda was notorious for bullying the weak and performing dirty tasks. Well, isn't this the lost young lady from our house?" Hilda sneered, her eyes sharp as she scanned Serafina's patched-up coat. "TSK. How did you end up in such a place? Mingling with beggars. Aren't you ashamed?" The other beggars in the temple, old and weak, looked over with frightened eyes. Eudora, frightened, tried to approach with a smile. But Serafina subtly held her back. She lifted her head, her face dirty but her eyes clear, staring directly at Hilda. "I think you've mistaken me. Ma'am, I'm an orphan picked up by Eudora, not some young lady." Her voice wasn't loud, but it was perfectly clear. Hilda didn't expect the little bastard to talk back. Her face darkened. Sharp-tongued. "The madam is kind-hearted. And I've come to see if you're dead yet. Be smart and come with me quietly, or you'll regret it." "Go back with her? To die?" Serafina's heart sneered. Her eyes darted around, noticing a few rotten fruit peels near the temple door and some stray dogs, their ribs showing, huddled in a corner. "Ma'am, one nap." Serafina suddenly pointed behind Hilda. "There's a big patch of mud on your heel. Looks like dog poop?" She said it loudly on purpose. Hilda, obsessed with cleanliness, immediately turned to check her heel, instinctively stepping to the side right onto the rotten fruit peels. "Ah!" Hilda slipped and fell hard onto the ground, crying out in pain. A little beggar nearby, watching the spectacle, couldn't hold back a laugh. Hilda, both hurt and embarrassed, glared, her face contorted with fury. "You little bitch. You did this on purpose." Serafina feigned innocence. "Ma'am, what? I was just warning you to watch your step." As she spoke, she secretly picked up a small clod of dirt and threw it at the hungry, green-eyed stray dogs in the corner, hitting one of them squarely on the head. Woof! The dog barked and leapt up, startled. It locked onto Hilda's conspicuous silk coat as it tried to escape. Woof! Woof! The hungry dogs, thinking Hilda was an intruder, bared their teeth and rushed at her. Hilda, terrified, didn't even bother to curse anymore. Screaming, she clutched her head and ran towards the temple exit, losing one of her shoes in the process. Her silk coat was torn by the dog's claws, leaving her looking like a stray dog herself. Serafina watched her flee, then raised her voice, addressing the stunned onlookers in the temple. "Did you all see that? She's from the Luna family. The same family whose madam beat me half to death and left me in the snow. She's not here for any good reason." The beggars, who had initially felt some sympathy for Hilda, immediately changed their attitude. All of them, being downtrodden themselves, hated people who abused their power. Serves her right. Not a single decent person in the Luna family. The murmurs of agreement filled the air. Hilda ran off, leaving behind her shoe, not daring to pick it up. Eudora, her heart still racing, clutched her chest. "Girl. You've got guts. What are we going to do if they come after us?" Serafina looked in the direction where Hilda had disappeared, her little fists slowly clenching. The fleeting satisfaction of victory quickly faded. She knew that Hilda, humiliated so thoroughly, wouldn't let this go easily. Her stepmother, Maleficent, would undoubtedly come up with a way to deal with her. Seeing how humiliated Hilda was, Serafina knew that trouble was coming. Maleficent, with her obsession with face-saving, couldn't possibly let this go. Her people had been humiliated by a mere child. She would never swallow this insult. Sure enough, the very next morning, just as dawn was breaking, the sounds of harsh shouting and the stampede of footsteps echoed outside the broken temple. That little bitch is hiding in this temple. Search it, the madam said. Bring her back and beat her to death. Hilda's shrill voice, full of hatred, could be heard, accompanied by the loud responses of several burly servants. Inside the temple, panic spread instantly. The beggars huddled together, trembling in fear. Eudora's face turned pale, and she grabbed Serafina's hand. Girl, run. Eudora, come with me. Serafina remained in her vingulum calm. She had been preparing for this day for a long time. For the past few days, she'd used the excuse of gathering wild herbs in the back mountains, secretly digging a small, barely big enough hole in the back corner of the dilapidated temple's wall with a broken tile. She covered it with an old straw mat. The sound of banging on the door echoed outside loud enough to break it open any moment. Serafina pulled Eudora toward the back wall, flipping the straw mat aside. Quick! Eudora! Crawl through! Eudora was old, her body stiff and trembling with fear. In a panic, Serafina pushed and shoved, forcing Eudora through the narrow opening. She followed quickly, slipping through like a little fish. Just as she emerged, there was a loud crash behind them. The temple door, already on the verge of falling apart, was broken down by the servants. Hilda's furious voice could be heard from inside. She's escaped. That little wretch ran out the back. After her. Serafina's heart raced as she pulled a terrified Eudora into a rugged, overgrown mountain path behind the temple. She knew these paths well, having fled for her life in her past life. And later, having followed Zenith down these very roads. She took them through narrow, thorn-covered trails, gradually leaving the shouting pursuers behind. They didn't dare stop, running until the sun was high in the sky, exhausted and hungry, their throats dry and burning. They finally reached a relatively flat official road. Collapsing in the bushes at the roadside, they panted heavily, struggling for breath. Just then, let out a low sigh. A suppressed groan sounded from the road ahead. Serafina cautiously peeked out and saw a half-worn blue cloth carriage parked at the side. A frail-looking old woman, dressed in a neat dark blue cotton gown with her hair meticulously combed, was clutching her chest, pale-faced, sliding down the wheel of the carriage, gasping for breath, clearly on the brink of fainting. A young servant, flustered and panicked, could only shout, Madame Ritsuko, what's wrong? Serafina's eyes quickly scanned the old woman's clothes. The fabric wasn't striking, but the luster and stitching were far superior to Hilda's silk jacket. This wasn't an ordinary family. A mental image of the herbal manual she had once secretly peeked at in the back mountains of Cold Mountain Temple flashed in her mind. Chest pains. Struggling for breath. Then her eyes lit up as she noticed a few remarkable plants by the roadside with small, fan-shaped leaves. Eudora, stay hidden, Serafina whispered, darting forward like a rabbit. What are you doing? The servant was startled and tried to stop her. Serafina ignored him and dashed to the herbs, quickly plucking a few tender leaves and shoving them into her mouth, chewing with all her might. The bitter, astringent juice mixed with a cool sensation spread through her mouth. She rushed to the fainting old woman's side, tiptoed, and carefully smeared the chewed herbs on the ACU point between her eyebrows and on her temples, rubbing them in forcefully. Madam, open your mouth, swallow just a little, she urged. Perhaps it was the cooling sensation or the medicinal effect, but the old woman's labored breathing slowly started to ease, and a faint flush returned to her ashen face. She opened her eyes with great effort, staring at the dirty, yet bright-eyed, anxious little girl before her. This? What is this? The old woman, Ritsuko, asked weakly. The herbs I picked by the roadside. I've seen the village elders use this in emergencies, Serafina explained vaguely, not daring to mention her past life. Ritsuko felt the crushing sensation in her chest ease significantly. Leaning against the wheel of the carriage, She took a long time to catch her breath before she looked at the girl who had saved her. Despite the ragged clothes, the dirt streaks on her face, and the rough hands, there was a calmness in her eyes. And the quick, efficient movements earlier made her seem far more than just an ordinary peasant girl. Girl. Ritsuko's voice was still weak, but her gaze sharpened. Where did you learn this medicine-saving skill? Serafina's heart skipped a beat. She lowered her head. No one taught me. When I was hungry, I tried all kinds of herbs. And I remembered a few that were edible and could help in emergencies. Ritsuko didn't press further. But after a moment of silence, she looked at the girl's tattered clothes and frostbitten hands and spoke. You've saved my life. In such a desolate place. You can't stay like this. My household still needs a diligent little maid. Will you come with me? At least I can promise you food, warmth, and a roof over your head. Eudora, too, emerged from the bushes, wide-eyed with both surprise and joy, watching Serafina. Serafina suddenly looked up, her heart pounding wildly. Escape from here. Leave the clutches of the Luna family. Food. Warmth. This was an opportunity she had never dared dream of. She looked at Ritsuko's fatigued yet commanding face and glanced at the road behind them, where the pursuers could still be lurking. Without a moment's hesitation, she nodded firmly, her voice filled with unwavering determination. Madam, as long as I can survive, leave this place. I will go with you. Anywhere is fine. Ritsuko's household was that of a high-ranking official. Lord Lin. In the capital. It wasn't the grandest estate, but it exuded a refined elegance. Serafina, now working under Ritsuko, became the lowest-ranking maid, responsible for cleaning the back quarters and running errands. The rules here were strict, and the work was tough, but Serafina was content. She had food, warm, thick cotton clothes, and a spot to sleep on a shared mat with the other maids. Though crowded, it was warm. She never forgot she was new and worked diligently without slack. When cleaning, she made sure every corner was spotless. When running errands, she delivered messages exactly as she was told. When handing something to the mistress or a senior maid, she always lowered her head and presented it with both hands. Steady and respectful. Ritsuko noticed this and silently nodded in approval. This girl was reliable, more mature than her years. Not at all like the other careless maids. The opportunity had come unexpectedly. That day, the elderly matriarch of the household, Percival's mother, suddenly suffered from an old affliction. Her head throbbed intensely, to the point where she banged her head against the wall in agony. Several doctors were called to attend to her, and after she drank several bowls of bitter medicinal broth, there was no improvement. The entire room of servants and maids anxiously paced back and forth, afraid to even breathe loudly. Serafina happened to be called to the front yard to deliver something, and, as she passed by the matriarch's quarters, heard muffled groans and hurried footsteps inside. She hesitated for a moment, and then muttered a low sigh. An image of a tattered medical book she had found in the corner of the Buddhist temple scripture pavilion from her previous life suddenly appeared clearly in her mind. The book seemed to mention a simple remedy for treating sudden headaches. She struggled internally. Should she say something? She was just a little maid. What if she said the wrong thing? But if she kept silent? The matriarch had always been kind to her, at least compared to others. As the groans from within grew more desperate, Serafina gritted her teeth. She quietly approached Ritsuko, who was wringing her hands anxiously at the door. Ma'am, she whispered, gently tugging at Ritsuko's sleeve. What is it? Can't you see we're in the middle of a crisis here? Ritsuko snapped, irritated. Ma'am. Serafina lowered her voice further but spoke clearly. I once heard a wandering physician mention a folk remedy for acute headaches. You crush fresh mint leaves and apply them to the temples, and then boil dried wild chrysanthemums to make a steam that you inhale. Ritsuko looked at her with suspicion. You? A physician? Can this method really work? Well, it's worth a try. Isn't it, ma'am? Serafina pleaded urgently. Her eyes filled with sincerity. It's better than watching the matriarch suffer. Ritsuko glanced back toward the room and then at Serafina. After a moment of hesitation, She remembered that this girl had once saved her. With a firm resolve, she said, "Mint and wild chrysanthemums. I think we have them in the garden. Go grab the mint. I'll find the chrysanthemums." The ingredients were quickly prepared. The mint leaves were crushed, releasing a cold juice that Serafina carefully applied to the matriarch's burning temples. The wild chrysanthemum water was boiled and released a fragrant steam, which the matriarch breathed in slowly. It was remarkable. In less than the time it took to brew a cup of tea, the matriarch's furrowed brow gradually relaxed, the frantic wall-banging ceased, and her breathing slowly steadied. Finally, she fell into a deep, peaceful sleep. When the matriarch awoke, her head still felt heavy, but the agonizing pain was gone. In a good mood, she immediately ordered Serafina to be brought before her. "Good girl. Was it your idea?" The matriarch leaned back on her soft pillow, studying Serafina closely. Serafina knelt before her, her head bowed low. "Yes, getting fulfilled my obsession, madam. It's a folk remedy I happened to overhear once. I'm lucky it worked." The matriarch smiled, and motioned for the head maid to bring a handful of golden melon seeds and give them to Serafina. "Here. Take these. You're clever. Even at such a young age. You're so resourceful. You don't seem like the average servant girl," she asked casually, but there was a gleam of curiosity in her eyes. Serafina's heart skipped a beat. Her palms grew sweaty, but she quickly accepted the melon seeds, keeping her head low. I had a hard life, madam. When I was young, I followed some refugees. Along the way, having fulfilled my obsession, I met a kind-hearted wandering physician who taught me to recognize a few medicinal herbs. They were for emergency use." She quickly spun the lie further. The matriarch gave a low oh, but didn't press further. She simply praised her for being resourceful and dismissed her. As Serafina left with the heavy bag of melon seeds, her back was drenched in sweat. She had just breathed a sigh of relief when she overheard two maids chatting in the hallway. "Have you heard? The prince from Han Mountain Temple, Master Zenith, seems a little off lately." "Yeah, Evan Dadaudi Wasai. Yeah. I heard people who went to burn incense said he seemed unsettled, even chanting the wrong words. TSK. He's like a living Buddha. What could possibly be bothering him?" Serafina froze mid-step, as if her feet had been nailed to the ground. Zenith? Unsettled? The image of his cold, disdainful face flashed before her eyes, followed by the endless despair beneath the flickering light of the Buddhist hall. Her chest tight and painfully cold and aching. She quickly forced a cold, detached smile and tightened her grip on the melon seeds. Without looking back, she hurriedly walked away. "Zenith? Whether he's troubled or not has nothing to do with me. Right now, I just want to live well in this Percival family." After the matriarch's headache was cured, she began to look at Serafina with a new sense of regard. Occasionally, she would call for her to serve tea or snacks. Serafina grew even more cautious, always lowering her gaze, speaking as little as possible. One day, a banquet was held, inviting several familiar ladies of the household. Serafina was assigned to serve tea next to the matriarch. The atmosphere at the banquet was lively when a fragrant breeze announced the arrival of two guests, dressed in colorful, elaborate attire. Serafina's hand shook, nearly spilling the hot tea, when she saw the guests Maleficent, her stepmother, and Luna, her half-sister. Maleficent was chatting amicably with the hostess, smiling broadly, while Luna followed behind with a delicate and gentle demeanor. But as soon as Luna's gaze fell upon Serafina, who was serving tea by the matriarch's side, her smile instantly froze, her eyes widening in disbelief, as if she had seen a ghost in broad daylight. "Ah!" Luna couldn't help but gasp, and the handkerchief she had been holding dropped to the floor. Her sudden exclamation drew the attention of everyone in the room. Maleficent followed her daughter's horrified gaze and, upon recognizing Serafina's now clean face, her fake smile shattered, replaced by shock and an unmistakable expression of disgust. This little bastard hadn't died? She had somehow made her way into the Percival family? Luna quickly recovered, bending down to pick up the handkerchief. putting on a pitiful expression as she pointed at Serafina. Mother! Look at that little maid. She had out a low sigh. She looks just like our lost half-sister. Serafina. It's uncanny. She emphasized the words half-sister and lost, with an almost deliberate weight. All eyes in the room turned to Serafina. Maleficent quickly reacted, adopting a sorrowful expression and glaring at Serafina. Yes. She looks just like her. My poor Serafina. To have suffered so much at such a young age. The two women played their parts, clearly trying to solidify Serafina's identity as the lost illegitimate daughter of the family, now serving as a maid in the prestigious Percival household, a stain on the family name. Serafina instantly understood the malicious intentions of the mother and daughter, and her anger flared even more. She took a deep breath, forcing herself to calm down. She set the teapot down and walked into the hall, bowing properly to Maleficent and Luna. When she lifted her head, her face was a picture of confusion and respect. Madam. Miss Cupidera. I believe you may have mistaken me for someone else. My name is Serafina. I grew up in a small village in the countryside. My parents are both gone. And it was only recently that Reetsopko kindly took me in. I am a lowly servant and could never aspire to associate with someone as noble as Miss. Her voice was clear, neither servile nor arrogant. With each, I am but a servant. She distanced herself from any pretensions, and pointed out that she was a mere pitiful soul who had been taken in. Meanwhile, Luna's exaggerated reaction earlier seemed a bit overblown, even petty. The ladies in the hall exchanged subtle glances. Luna had not expected Serafina to play her part so well, and so convincingly. Her face flushed, first red then pale, as she tried to speak. But Luna! Maleficent quickly grabbed her, shooting her a sharp glare. This was not the time to argue further anymore, would only bring shame to the Luna family. She forced down the rising anger and confusion, barely managing a smile. Oh. Perhaps I was mistaken. There are some people who look quite alike. Her gaze, however, turned venomous, like a poison needle, drilling into Serafina. Serafina lowered her head and stepped back to stand beside the old lady, her back straight. She could feel the old lady's scrutinizing gaze on her, thoughtful and deep. The old lady took a sip from her teacup, leisurely savoring it, but not looking at Maleficent or Luna. Instead, she smiled kindly at Serafina and said, Serafina, you're still young, but you've handled things with remarkable calm. Those people earlier. And you didn't even flinch. Almost like you've seen a lot of the world. The words sounded like praise. But Maleficent and Luna's faces turned even darker. The old lady was clearly hinting at them while protecting that little wretch. The banquet went on with Maleficent and Luna eating as if chewing wax. Luna occasionally shot venomous glances at Serafina. Serafina, however, appeared unaffected, calmly attending to the duties. Yet, no one saw that her hand, resting by her side, had deep nails digging into her palm. Finally, having fulfilled their, when the troublesome pair was finally escorted out, Luna, seizing a moment when no one was paying attention, whispered menacingly in Serafina's ear as she passed by. Lowly servant. Climbed to high now. Have you? Just you wait. While working at the Percival household, thanks to the gold coins the old lady had given her and the money she saved through frugality, Serafina finally had some spare cash. She didn't want to remain a maid forever. Nor did she want to end up back under the thumb of the Luna family. Money was her only lifeline. She recalled the little things from her past life that, though unremarkable, could make money. The capital's winters were cold and dry, and the hands of wealthy ladies and madams easily cracked. She remembered an old monk from Cold Mountain Temple who made a special clam oil balm cheap, yet highly effective. Though it wasn't sold at the temple, the recipe came back to her in a flash. It mainly consisted of regular clam oil, mixed with a bit of cheap almond oil and a tiny bit of honey, leaving a faint, sweet fragrance when applied. Eudora, now too old for heavy work, was allowed by Matilda to do lighter tasks. Serafina asked Eudora for help, quietly gathering the materials and, that evening, retreating to a small shed behind the maids' quarters to experiment. After a few tries, She finally produced the familiar texture from her past life when applied. The painful cracks on her dry skin healed quickly. She carefully packaged the balm into small porcelain jars, having Eudora take them to the market and set up a stall, asking some familiar old friends to sell them for a slight markup. The balm was cheap and effective. Far better than the expensive, overly scented creams sold in shops. Soon, let out a low sigh. They had returning customers, and the copper coins Eudora brought back grew steadily. Serafina's small purse gradually grew heavier. She was cautious, ensuring all transactions were handled through Eudora, and she never appeared in person. She also made sure to avoid anything related to the temple or incense, fearful of drawing any attention from Zenith. But trouble soon came knocking. The inexpensive yet effective clam balm had unknowingly started cutting into the business of Freeway Fragrance Shop, which wasn't too big, but specialized in mid to low-end incense, oils, and powders, and had some dealings with Cold Mountain Temple for regular incense supplies. One day, as Eudora set up their stall at the market, a middle-aged man wearing a satin mandarin jacket and sporting a thin mustache, flanked by 2 henchmen, stormed over. It was Clint from Freeway Fragrance Shop. Old hag, who gave you permission to sell this trash? Clint almost kicked over Eudora's stall, spitting angrily. Do you know you're stealing our business? Get out of here, or I'll smash your stall. Eudora, frightened, turned pale, clutching her stall and trembling. From behind the crowd, Serafina's heart leapt to her throat. She took a deep breath, pushed her way through the crowd, and stood in front of Eudora. Though small, her back was straight, her stance firm. Sir, we must speak reasonably. Serafina's voice rang out clear and crisp, and the surrounding crowd could hear. This market is designated by the government, and anyone who pays the stall fee can set up. We're selling our own homemade goods, not stealing anything. Why does that bother you? Is this market yours? Or are you saying no one else can sell better products than Freeway Fragrance? Her words were reasonable, pointing out his bullying tactics. The crowd started murmuring and pointing. Clint, taken aback, blushed in anger. Sharp-tongued little girl. How do you know what kind of filthy ingredients are in that cheap balm? What if it ruins your hands? Filthy ingredients? Serafina scoffed. She grabbed a jar of balm, opened it, and applied a small amount to the back of her hand, which had become rough from work. Look here. I use it every day, and my hands aren't rotting. Are they? Sir, if you think there's something wrong, we can go to the authorities for a test. If the balm passes, will you kneel before me and apologize publicly? Dare you? Her boldness, coupled with the noticeable improvement on her hand, immediately silenced Clint. He knew full well how much water he'd added to the balm. If tested, he'd be the one embarrassed. You. Just wait. Clint, livid but unable to retort, spat one last threatening remark before pushing his way out of the crowd, followed by his henchmen. Laughter and applause erupted from the onlookers. Serafina let out a breath, her back soaked with cold sweat. She quickly packed up the stall and, pulling the still shaking Eudora along, made her way out of the trouble spot. Just as she turned to leave, her eye caught a flash of movement from the second-floor window of a tea house across the street. A figure, a monk's robe in dull gray blue, flitting past the window. That silhouette, that side profile, cold, indifferent, high and aloof. Zenith? Serafina's heart seemed to be gripped by a cold hand, squeezing so tightly that it stopped beating for an instant. Her blood froze in her veins. How could he be here? In this commonplace? Did he let out a low sigh? Did he see her? Did he witness the farce from earlier? A wave of intense panic surged within her, almost drowning her. The despair she felt in her previous life, the way he had loathed her, judged her, and cast her aside, once again constricted around her throat. No, no. This can't be happening. Serafina violently shook her head, digging her nails deep into her palm, using the pain to force herself back to clarity. She took a deep breath, her gaze hardening into a cold, unyielding stare. So what if he saw? She grabbed Eudora's arm and, without looking back, darted into a nearby alley. Her steps quick, like she was fleeing. This life is different. Zenith. We are already 2 worlds apart. She told herself in her heart. But the unease she had forced down crept back into her mind. Was his appearance here just a coincidence? The small business selling clam oil balm was doing better and better. And Serafina had saved up a little more money. She was considering whether she could add a few other useful items to her stock when disaster struck. Ever since Luna had been humiliated at the Percival family banquet, she had brooded over it, growing angrier and more resentful with each passing day. The bastard who should have died in the snow, rotting away in a ruined temple, not only survived but had earned the favor of the Percival matriarch. Now, she was secretly running her own little business? What gave her the right? Luna spent a large sum to bribe a little helper, who worked for Serafina and was responsible for delivering materials to Eudora, a boy named Gouzi. Gouzi was greedy, and the money Luna gave him was enough to feed his family for half a year. He didn't care about his conscience. Find an opportunity and mix this into the batch of balm they're making. Luna's trusted maid handed Gouzi an oiled paper packet, her eyes filled with malice. Once it's done, you'll be well rewarded. Inside the paper packet was a nearly colorless powder. When brought close to the nose, it released a faint, sickly sweet odor, almost nauseating. It was the very same potent aphrodisiac scent that had ruined Serafina's reputation in her past life, and caused Zenith to utterly disdain her. Serafina's new batch of balm was nearly finished and was being sealed into jars. Gouzi took advantage of the chaos of moving things around and quietly sneaked into the small storage shed where the balm was kept. Shaking, he dumped the deadly powder into a large basin of freshly mixed balm, stirring it carelessly before hurrying away. Serafina was especially attentive to the batch she needed to deliver. That evening, as usual, she performed her final check of the products. She picked up a small jar of freshly sealed balm, and instinctively brought it close to her now seaside from the familiar faint scent of clam oil and almond oil. Wait. A subtle, almost imperceptible, sickly sweet odor surged into her nostrils. Serafina's mind went blank in an instant. Her blood seemed to freeze in her veins, and the terrifying feeling from her past life burned by fierce flames. Her sanity shattering, and then falling into the abyss of despair rushed back, overwhelming her. It's this smell. Luna. It's her again. She's trying to ruin me once more with the same poison. Rage immediately crushed the fear. She forced herself to calm down, her eyes turning sharp as a blade. This batch of balm had only just been mixed, and only a few people had access to it. She carefully observed the basin of contaminated balm and noticed a small, unmixed residue of powder the size of a fingernail in the corner. Gouzi. He was the only one who sneaked into the shed today. Serafina didn't raise any alarms or make any accusations. She silently moved the contaminated balm to the most inconspicuous corner and covered it with a lid. Then, let out a low sigh. Acting like nothing had happened, she carefully packaged the clean, properly made balms. 2 days later, Eudora came rushing to find her. Girl. Big business. Luna's family sent someone to order 10 boxes of our finest powder, saying they're going to give it to some lady she as a birthday gift. They've already paid a deposit. They specifically requested the most fragrant. Serafina's eyes narrowed, and a cold smile curled at her lips. The most fragrant? Luna. You're walking straight into your own doom. Eudora. You rest for now. I'll handle this special order myself. I'll make sure the young lady is satisfied. Serafina's tone was calm. She walked into the shed and pulled out the top-tier powders she had already prepared, adding the special ingredients that were originally kept for emergencies. Then, let out a low sigh. She opened the basin in the corner that emitted the deadly sweet odor, carefully scooping some of the contaminated balm with a small spoon, and mixed it evenly, leaving none behind, into the 10 boxes of premium powder. The already rich fragrance of the powder perfectly masked the strange, sickly sweetness. Once everything was mixed, Serafina meticulously sealed the boxes, tying them with beautiful silk ribbons, making them look exquisite. She personally handed the 10 boxes of special powder to the maid sent by Luna's family. Go back and tell the young lady, Serafina said with the perfect amount of respectful smile. This powder is a new formula. Its fragrance is rich and long-lasting. I'm sure lady she will love it. The maid took the goods and left, her steps full of pride. Serafina stood at the door, watching the cart carrying the powder disappear around the corner. Her smile slowly fading, replaced by coldness and hatred. The image of Zena's disgusted, contemptuous gaze, and the endless light of the Buddhist hall, flashed before her eyes. She gently closed her eyes. When she opened them again, her gaze was clear. Luna, do you like it? You should taste this calming fragrance yourself now. The wife of the assistant minister was delighted and graciously accepted. She immediately used a small silver spoon to scoop a little, lightly dabbing it on the inside of her wrist. Several other noble ladies, who were friends with her, eagerly asked for some to try this rare product. The scent was indeed strong, quickly filling the entire hall. At first, the ladies praised the unique fragrance with laughter. But before long, the assistant minister's wife, who had been the first to try it, began to look uncomfortable. She felt an inexplicable heat rise within her, her face burning as if on fire, her heart racing, and the world around her seemed to waver. Ah, this fragrance. Priscilla, standing nearby, also noticed something was off. Her breath quickened, her gaze became dazed, and she started to unconsciously tug at her collar. So hot. I feel so uncomfortable. Water. Water. Give me water. Cries of distress echoed around the room. Every lady who had come into contact with the fragrance powder was now flushed, their gazes vacant, and their movements lost all trace of noble composure. Some slumped in their chairs, gasping for breath, while others frantically fanned themselves. The situation quickly spiraled out of control. Ah, what's happening? Luna's smile froze completely. Her face drained of color as she screamed in panic. All eyes in the room immediately shifted from the disoriented ladies to Luna. Disdain, mud out a low sigh, anger, shock, and amusement. Every gaze pierced through her like daggers. Luna, what on earth did you give us? You must have tampered with it. Trying to embarrass us. Shameless. You've ruined the Luna family's reputation. Luna was speechless, her reputation crumbling under the weight of insults. The carefully cultivated good name she had worked so hard to maintain became the laughingstock of the entire capital in that instant. Within the Luna family, her stepmother Maleficent, upon hearing the news, fainted from rage. When she came to, seeing her daughter weeping and her reputation in tatters, she was both furious and anxious. Like an ant on a hot stove. Mother, what should I do? They all say it was me who harmed them. How am I supposed to face anyone again? Luna cried, her eyes swollen from tears. Maleficent's sighs hardened, and she suddenly grabbed Luna's hand. Don't worry, Luna. I have a plan. We'll invite the monk from Cold Mount and Temple Master Zenith. We'll ask him to come to our house and see. It must be your half-sister's ghost causing the trouble. Or maybe someone cursed the fragrance powder. The master's Buddhist powers are boundless. He'll exorcise the evil and clear your name. In a panic, Maleficent clung to the hope that the most influential person she could find would help clear her daughter's name. Soon, let out a low sigh. The news spread, the Luna family has encountered an evil spirit, and the eldest daughter has been wronged. With special emphasis that they had invited Master Zenith to personally come and exorcise the evil. The news reached the Percival family. Serafina was in the midst of arranging flowers for the old lady when she overheard the gossip from a maid. Her hands didn't stop moving, but her lips curled into a cold smile. Zenith? She sneered inwardly. When she had been slandered in her past life, did he ever think of exorcising the evil for her? Now that Luna had fallen, they were calling on him to uphold justice? What a grand irony. She couldn't help but wonder if Zenith, the blind and heartless monk, would be swayed to favor Luna this time. At the Luna family, the atmosphere was tense. Zenith, dressed in his dull gray-blue monk's robe, exuded an air of cold detachment as he was respectfully received by Maleficent and Luna. He had no desire to be involved in worldly disputes. But sinful Luna family was once part of the royal household and had called on him in the name of evil spirits. He had no choice but to come. Maleficent, tearful and snotty, recounted her daughter's wrongful suffering, insisting it must be caused by evil spirits. Luna, kneeling before Zenith, cried with the pitiful look of someone who had been wronged. Dinah's expression remained indifferent. Unmovable. Where is the offending fragrance powder? A servant quickly brought forward the box of fragrance powder that had caused all the chaos. Dinah extended his long, bony fingers, pinching a small amount of the powder. He didn't immediately begin chanting incantations to exorcise the evil. Instead, as was his habit, he brought his fingers close to his nose, subtly inhaling the fragrance. The moment the strange scent entered his nostrils, Zenith was struck as if by a thunderclap. He froze in place, his body stiffening. That smell. That sickeningly sweet, cloying scent. It was the same one he had encountered all those years ago, the one Serafina had burned in the calming incense, that had driven him to madness, plunging him into a rage-fueled abyss. Identical. How could this be? Why was this smell here? Why was it in the fragrance powder Luna had given to the noble ladies? Zenith's fingers trembled uncontrollably. Cold despair rushed into his mind with memories long buried the image of the out-of-control girl. The disgusted rejection, the cold floor of the temple, and the news he had later received: Serafina had died in the northern frontier. Zenith's grip on the powder tightened, his knuckles turning white. He raised his eyes, meeting the tear-streaked faces of Luna and Maleficent. His gaze was no longer one of pity, but of deep scrutiny and suspicion. A chilling question rose in his mind. One that sent a shiver down his spine. Where did this fragrance come from? The Han Chun-san, in this powder. Zenith's voice was dry and hoarse as he held up the box, his gaze sharp and venomous, like a poisoned blade, as it suddenly turned toward the trembling Luna. Luna's legs gave way, and she nearly collapsed, her voice shrill with panic. No. Buddha. Please see the truth. It's her. It's Serafina who set me up. She pointed a trembling finger at Serafina, her eyes filled with venom. Set you up? Serafina finally spoke, her voice as cold as ice. She took a step forward, her gaze sweeping over the crowd before landing on Zenith's face, which was written with shock and pain. Well, let's have everyone judge for themselves. This esteemed elder sister bribed a worker from my workshop, Go Uzi, to slip this Han Chun's and into my balm, trying to ruin me with the same dirty trick. Serafina's lips curled into a cold smile as she pulled out a signed confession and a small bag of the leftover poison. Go Uzi, fearing for his life, confessed everything. And here are the records of her Materstard buying the poison from the apothecary. She slammed the evidence onto the stone table with a resounding thud. The black and white words, the red handprint, stood as undeniable proof. You're lying. Luna paled, still trying to argue. If I'm lying, just ask Lady She and the other ladies who used the powder. Serafina was unyielding. They made fools of themselves in public. Do you also think that was my scheme? Luna, in your attempt to harm me, you dragged the innocent into it. How vile your heart is. And noble ladies around them exchanged looks filled with scorn and anger, their murmurs filling the air. Zenith stared at Luna's grotesque expression, then glanced at Serafina's face, which was devoid of warmth, her eyes cold and mocking. His own icy reproaches from his past life shameless. Go to the Buddha Hall. Beg her for medicine. Felt like a slap across his own face, ringing painfully in his ears. The face that was once so familiar, now marked by indifference. The eyes that no longer held the slightest trace of affection, only complete unfamiliarity. It was her. The Serafina he had thought he would never see again. She hadn't died. Not only had she survived, but she was standing here, sharp-eyed and full of defiance. No longer the meek and humble girl he remembered. He took a step forward, his voice trembling with an emotion he hadn't realized. That powder, the one from back then, was it Luna's doing? He tried to explain, but it was too late. He was grasping at something that wasn't there. Serafina, I wronged you. Luna's reputation was thoroughly ruined. She was so humiliated she didn't even dare leave her house. Her mother, Maleficent, was furious, her lips frothing with anxiety. But she no longer had the face to seek help from Zenith. After that day, when he left with such a broken look. Anyone who saw him felt uneasy. On Matilda's side, upon hearing the full story, of course, carefully reworded by Serafina, omitting any mention of previous lives, and simply stating that Luna had tried to harm her with dirty tricks, but was caught and turned against. The old lady slammed her hand on the table in anger. What a venomous woman. That Luna. Serafina. Don't worry. I'll see this through for you. Matilda truly had a soft spot for the calm, capable girl. Without hesitation, she issued an order to recognize Serafina as her god-granddaughter. And just like that, Serafina, once a lowly maid from the Luna family, became a proper young lady of the Percival household. Her name officially changed to Serafina. Eudora was also granted favor and would share in the benefits. As for the small business selling clam oil balms and scented powders, Matilda waved her hand dismissively. Child. No more small-time schemes. I'll give you the capital and a shop. Do whatever you want. You've got the talent. And you know a bit about herbs. You'll make something of yourself. Serafina felt a bittersweet warmth in her heart. She knelt and kowtowed to the old lady 3 times. She would remember this kindness for the rest of her life. With the scandal of the Luna family and the shadow of Zenith hanging over her in the capital, Serafina felt suffocated. She planned to head south, where the weather was warmer, and business was said to be better. Using the funds Matilda had given her, she quietly organized a small caravan, filled with sought-after southern textiles, medicinal herb seeds, and a few of the practical trinkets she had crafted herself. On the day of departure, the sky was still dim with the early morning light. The caravan stopped outside the city gates. Waiting for them to open, Serafina sat in the front of a plain carriage, lifting the curtain to take one last look at the towering city gates. There was no sense of longing, only a sense of relief, like finally breaking free from a cage. Miss, everything's ready. We can leave as soon as the gates open. Eudora, now her manager, said with a bright spirit. Good, Serafina replied, letting the curtain fall. As the caravan slowly began to move, the wheels clattering on the road, no one noticed the figure standing in the vast shadow of the city gate's zenith, like a stone statue, unmoving. He watched as Serafina's carriage grew smaller and smaller, a deep emptiness spreading in his chest. The image of her kneeling in the Buddha hall, her frail figure as she descended the mountain, and that death in the northern border he had overlooked, all flashed before his eyes. But most of all, it was the look in her eyes, the light that had completely extinguished for him, never to return. It felt like a thousand and knives twisting in his heart. The compassion he once prided himself on, the clarity he so firmly believed in, now seemed utterly, tragically wrong. He had been blind, and his heart had been closed. He had, with his own hands, pushed the one person who had truly relied on him into the abyss, time and time again. Regret and pain, like a tidal wave, crashed over him, drowning him, crushing him into nothing. The Buddhist heart he had prided himself on, the meditation he had spent years perfecting, all came crashing down in that instant. As I was about to fill in my name on the exam paper, a blood-red message suddenly floated across my vision. Clara, look, your sister switched your exam permit. Hurry and tell the invigilator. My fingers paused slightly, and a cold smile crept onto my lips. Ignoring the message in front of me, I calmly wrote Clara on the paper, because I knew, in my previous life, it was this very message that ruined my entire life. The barrage of messages kept coming, and memories flooded back like a tidal wave. Exactly 1 year ago, in the same exam hall, the same warning message appeared. At the time, in a panic, I raised my hand to report it to the invigilator. The police intervened, and my sister's exam permit was switched back on the spot. Everyone praised me for my sharpness, but little did they know, that was the beginning of my nightmare. When the results were released, my usual steady score of over 700 points in mock exams had plummeted to 350. While my sister Wendy, who could barely scrape by in the third-tier schools, got into Tsinghua University. The drastic difference in scores sparked a nation-wide debate. Netizens dug into past exam records, And the truth was exposed, the academic star was me. The failure was Wendy. The real academic star is me. Wendy sobbed on camera, her eyes brimming with tears. Every exam, my sister substituted for me. Only in the Gaokao, this fair competition, did her true abilities get exposed. My best friend Maggie was the first to speak up. Clara cheats in every exam. We all saw it. She even showed blurry photos on her phone, where the person, who looked like me, was caught looking at a cheat sheet under the desk. The whole class echoed her. And even the homeroom teacher hesitated before admitting there were indeed such instances. The most crushing blow came from my mother, who, in an interview, said with a heartbroken expression, "This child comes home and plays video games all day. Swears all the time. I can't control her." I wanted to clarify, heading to filled my absai. But my mother slapped me across the face. "Are you trying to ruin your sister? If you're so guilty, just repeat the year." No one knew about those fora. Desk clamps. Those tattered notebooks. Or the nights I hid under the covers with a flashlight to study. When I insisted on clearing my name, my mother pushed me down the stairs. "Student, please focus on your exam." The invigilator's voice snapped me back to reality. I noticed my hand was trembling slightly, and the pen had left a small black dot on the answer sheet. I took a deep breath and began to answer seriously. The messages kept flashing. "Silly girl. Your sister switched your exam permit. I'm dying here. Why aren't you doing anything? It's over. This child is hopeless." I ignored them, writing fluently. In my previous life, I scored 148 in Chinese, and every answer was etched in my memory. As for the essay, I could recite it word for word after all. It was the experience I gained with blood and tears. When the exam bell rang and I handed in my paper, I walked out of the hall. Wendy immediately approached, wearing a deliberate expression of concern. "Sis, how was the exam?" I noticed she had tied her hair into a ponytail just like mine, even wearing the same hairpin. "Not bad. The questions weren't too hard," I replied casually. But my eyes were fixed on the transparent file she was holding, which was exactly the same as mine. She noticed my gaze and her fingers subconsciously tightened around the file. There was no problem with the exam permit, right?" I tilted my head, feigning confusion. "Exam permit? What could be wrong?" A flash of smugness passed through her eyes, which she quickly masked. "Nothing. Just asking." At that moment, my mother suddenly squeezed her way through the crowd, a rare smile on her face. "How did you do?" Her gaze flickered between me and Wendy before finally resting on Wendy. "Mom." Wendy immediately hooked her arm around our mothers. "I think I did really well. I'm sure I can get in." She deliberately raised her voice, drawing the attention of nearby parents. I also smiled sweetly. "Same here. I finished all the questions. It should be fine." My mother frowned slightly when she heard my words, but still happily patted us both on the shoulders. "Great. Come on. Let's go eat. You both keep up the good work this afternoon." She walked ahead with Wendy, and I silently followed behind, pretending not to notice. I quickly caught up and affectionately hooked Wendy's arm. "Let's go. We need to eat quickly. We still have math this afternoon." I could feel Wendy's arm stiffen for a moment. Math was my strong subject, and as I smoothly completed the last question, the messages on my phone had shifted from urgent to confused. Why is she so calm? Does she know something we don't? Of course. I knew. Sure enough, on the third day, after the last exam ended, as I walked out of the hall, Wendy couldn't wait any longer to reveal her hand. "Sis. Actually." She bit her lip, looking embarrassed. "Our exam permits got mixed up by accident," she said, pretending to wipe away non-existent tears from her eyes. I widened my eyes. "What do you mean?" I deliberately let my voice tremble. "Well, I've actually been using your exam permit these past few days." Her voice grew softer. "You're not mad at me, right?" She looked up, a gleam of mischief flashing in her eyes. The barrage of messages exploded with fury. "Shameless. She switched them on purpose and still says it was an accident. Clara. Expose her." I fell silent for a few seconds before forcing a smile. It's okay. After all, we're twins. We look alike. Worst case, I'll retake the exam next year. I lowered my head, feigning sadness. Wendy's eyes lit up, and she immediately hugged me tightly. Sis, you're the best. I knew you wouldn't be angry. Her hug was forceful, like a victory proclamation. When we got home, my mother had already prepared a lavish meal. Wendy rushed in and shouted excitedly, "Mom, I'm sure I'll get into tincture this time." My mother excitedly put down the spatula and rushed over to embrace Wendy. Really? That's great. I knew you were the best. She kissed Wendy's forehead, completely ignoring me. I stood aside, the same smile on my face. Yeah, Wendy did great this time. My mother finally noticed me, dismissively saying, "Clara worked hard too." Then, she turned back to shower Wendy with praise. Watching their joyous faces, I sneered inwardly. Let them be happy for a few more days. When the results come out, let's see if they can still smile. That night, my sister gathered the entire class to a KTV to celebrate the end of the college entrance exam. I didn't want to go, but the comments on the screen insisted. You have to go. Let's see what other schemes they have. The private room was filled with smoke and noise. My sister and Maggie sat in the middle, surrounded by everyone. I noticed Yolanda sitting in the corner, the only classmate who never spoke harshly to me. Wendy, tincture is in the bag, right? A boy asked, handing her a drink with a fawning smile. My sister flipped her hair smugly. Of course. My score is at least 700. She glanced at me as she spoke. Wow! The crowd gasped in awe. Maggie threw her arm around my sister's shoulder. Our Wendy is a genius. She just keeps it low-key. I sat quietly in the corner, sipping my orange juice. Yolanda quietly came over and sat beside me. Clara. Are you okay? Her voice was soft, filled with genuine concern. Before I could answer, Maggie's sharp voice cut in. Hey, Yolanda. What are you talking to her for? Don't let her influence you. Yolanda shrank back and said nothing more. I made an excuse to go to the bathroom and left the private room. But in the hallway, I overheard a conversation between my sister and Maggie. Is everything ready? My sister's voice asked. Don't worry. Maggie lowered her voice. The photos are all edited. The chat logs are forged. Just waiting for your mom to handle. My mom's definitely on my side. My sister sneered. She'd be happy to see that bookworm disappear. A chill ran through me, and I hurriedly walked away. When I reached the door, I realized I'd forgotten my phone and had to go back to get it. As I pushed the door open, I froze in shock at the scene that greeted me. The KTV room door slid open silently. The people inside had their backs to me and didn't notice my presence. Wendy and Maggie stood in front of the big screen, surrounded by 5 or 6 classmates. On the screen, there was my photo, photoshopped to show me playing games in an internet CIF, with a table full of cigarettes and alcohol. This one's the best, Maggie said proudly, pointing to another photo. I put her in a bar bathroom, making it look like she's smoking. Perfect. Wendy clapped her hands. Once the results are out, if she dares to make a fuss, hadn't a fuss, we'll post these online and say she flunked because she's fallen. A-boy hesitated. Won't that be too much? Too much. Wendy sneered. Do you know how fake she acts? Always pretending to be the good student. It's disgusting. Maggie agreed. Exactly. People like her deserve it. Wendy is the real genius. She just lets her have the spotlight. I stood frozen at the door, my hands and feet numb. In my past life, these fake photos had indeed appeared online, becoming solid evidence of my alleged moral decay. By the way, Wendy suddenly lowered her voice. Maggie, you're sure those chat logs are fine? Don't worry. Maggie took out her phone. I used software to generate 6 months of chat logs, all of Clara asking for answers. The timestamps even match each exam. A girl timidly asked, What if she does well this time? The room fell silent for a moment. Wendy laughed loudly. Impossible. She's using my admission ticket. You guys know my level, right? Getting into a third-tier school is already impressive. But the girl tried to say more but was interrupted by Maggie. Don't worry. Auntie said even if she does well, we'll say it was Wendy's score. After all, we're twins. Who can tell the difference? Just as I was about to turn and leave, I saw an even more shocking scene. Shaking with fear, I covered my mouth, too terrified to make a sound, and rushed out of the KTV. The heat of the summer night hit me when I stepped outside, but I felt a deep, bone-chilling cold. 2 weeks later, on the day the college entrance exam results were announced, our family sat in front of the computer. My mom's hands shook uncontrollably, and my sister wore a smug look on her face. Wait. Mom suddenly stood up. Clara, come with me to the room. Her voice was intentionally gentle, but I could sense the tension underneath. I sneered, already knowing what she was about to say. She wanted me to publicly claim I had failed the exam and give my place at Tingshua to my sister. Walking into the room, Mom sat at the vanity chair, a stack of documents in front of her. Clara. She patted the seat beside her. Come sit. She handed me a cup of hot milk. Drink something first. I took the cup, pretending not to notice the calculating look that flashed in her eyes. In my past life, it was this cup of spiked milk that made me falter during the subsequent interview, sealing my fate as a cheater. I sat obediently, placing the cup aside, and glanced at the stack of papers. They were my sister's simulated exam results. None higher than 450. Actually, Mom suddenly lowered her voice. I have a secret to tell you. I have a system that can swap your and your sister's scores. I pretended to be shocked. What? Her tone was eerily soft. But it's okay. Your sisters. Who cares who goes to university? She looked at me with cold eyes. Continuing. Clara. You're the older sister. You have to give way to your sister. Understand? I lowered my head. Silent. Your sister's health isn't good. You know that. Mom continued. She needs a better learning environment. You can repeat the year, and I'll enroll you in the best tutoring classes. I looked up, staring into her eyes. What if I say no? Her expression instantly turned cold. Clara. Don't be ungrateful. Since we were young, what has your sister not been able to do? Can't you just let her have it? Let her have the college entrance exam too? I asked quietly. Slap. A sharp slap landed on my face, burning with pain. I'll tell you this. Mom gritted her teeth. I'm the one in charge of this house. If you dare to make a scene, don't call me your mother. I smiled and touched my face. Mom, haha. Why don't we take a look at the results first? Just then, made on a low sigh, my sister pushed the door open. Mom. We can check the results now. We returned to the computer, and Mom clicked the query button with trembling hands. I got it. Mom screamed. 725. Third in the province. My sister immediately jumped up. It's me. It's my score. Mom hugged her, tears of joy in her eyes. My precious daughter. You're amazing. I calmly sat to the side, watching them perform. Clara. Mom turned to me, her tone icy. You know what you need to do, right? I tilted my head. What do you mean? You're to tell everyone that this is your sister's score, she said sharply. If you even slip up by a word. Mom. I interrupted her. Why don't you take a closer look? Who really got this score? The room fell silent. My sister's face turned ashen. What? What do you mean? I slowly pulled out my phone and opened the page I had prepared in advance, entering my admission ticket number. The screen displayed 725. Clara. Impossible. Wendy screamed. You're using my exam permit. Hearing her, my mother turned to her in shock. Wendy. You switched the exam permits? Wendy shook her head frantically. No, my mother muttered to herself. So careless. So careless. With trembling hands, she entered Wendy's exam permit number, 328 points. This can't be. My mother collapsed into the chair. Wendy suddenly threw herself at me. What did you do? This is clearly my score. I looked coldly at Wendy's hysterics. Then turned to my mother and said, "Now, it's time to tell me how the permit switch system works. Isn't it?" My mother's face turned pale. Her lips trembling. Unable to speak, Wendy rushed in front of her, grabbing her shoulders and shaking her violently. "Mom, use the system to switch the scores back. Didn't you say it could be changed anytime?" My mother's eyes began to glaze over. The system says it can only be switched once." "What?" Wendy screamed, suddenly shoving my mother away. "You idiot! Why didn't you say so earlier?" Mom stumbled and crashed into the bookshelf, causing glass ornaments to shatter everywhere. She cried out hysterically, "Isn't this all for you? All these years? And now you blame me?" I watched them tear into each other, quietly retreating to the door. Taking advantage of their struggle, I quickly grabbed my backpack and ran out of the house. The summer night breeze blew away the sweat on my forehead. I hailed a taxi and, using the pocket money I had saved up over 3 years, booked a room at a hotel in the city center. Lying on the soft bed, the past flashed before my eyes like a revolving lantern. Mom had always favored Wendy since childhood, simply because Wendy knew how to act cute and charming, while I was always quiet and withdrawn. Even though we were identical twins, Ma was extremely biased toward Wendy, believing I was dull and boring, someone who would eventually become a heartless person. As I was deep in thought, my phone suddenly vibrated. I took it out and saw that the class group chat had exploded. Maggie had sent a link, which opened to a local media report. Shocking. The 725-point Gao Cow genius is suspected of cheating. Her mother tearfully reports her. In the video, Mom and Wendy were both crying, their faces blotched with tears. This child has never been honest. Mom wiped away her tears. As a mother, I cannot cover for her. Wendy sobbed, adding, "My sister often threatened me, asking me to pass her the answers during exams. I just couldn't bear the guilt." I trembled as I scrolled down, seeing Maggie had shared screenshots of some blurry chat logs, identical to what I had overheard at KTV. "Clara is disgusting. She acts so high and mighty, but turns out she's a cheater. Suggest Tingshuo revoke her admission." The insults spread from the class group chat to social media. My private messages exploded. Some cursed me to die. Others tracked down my address. And some even edited a death photo of me. Only the messages floating across my screen still spoke in my defense. It makes me so angry. Are these people blind? Clara, don't be afraid. We've seen the truth. Call the police. Sue them for slander. I shakily dialed 110. After listening to my explanation, the operator's tone became serious. "We will immediately open an investigation." I hung up and posted a statement. "I have recorded this to the police. All those who spread false rumors will be held legally responsible." The statement was immediately drowned out by even more insults. "Stop pretending. Go ahead. Sue us. Cheating dog is jumping over the wall. Everyone take screenshots for evidence, and see how she ends up." At 3 a.m. I still couldn't sleep. Suddenly, my phone vibrated again. It was a message from Yolanda. "Clara, I believe you. Maggie bragged yesterday that she forged those chat logs. Do you need me to testify?" My eyes welled up, and I was about to reply when the door was suddenly banged on with a deafening sound. "Clara, we know you're in there." It was Wendy's sharp voice. "Open the door. The media is waiting." I looked through the peephole and saw the hallway packed with people. Wendy was holding her phone and live streaming. Mom was beside her, tearfully speaking to the camera. "This child has run away from home. We're so worried." I took a deep breath, and suddenly pulled the door open. Blinding camera flashes immediately focused on my face, and dozens of phones captured the moment. "Sis." Wendy immediately threw herself at me, grabbing my arm, her voice quivering with tears. "Come back home. Mom is seriously ill." I coldly shook her off. "What's the rush? In a hurry to spread more lies?" Mom immediately stepped forward, putting on a sorrowful expression for the camera. Clara. Mom knows she was wrong. I shouldn't have reported you for cheating. As long as you promise to turn over a new leaf, I'll forgive you. The comments exploded instantly. What kind of ridiculous family is this? Mom apologized. And she still won't be grateful? Cheating dog. Stop acting pure. Suddenly, Wendy kneeled and hugged my legs. Sis. Please. Don't make a scene. And netizens are cursing our whole family. She turned to the camera. Tears streaming down her face. Please. Everyone. Show mercy. My sister was just confused. A wave of nausea rolled in my stomach. In my previous life, this was how they used family ties to bind me. And public opinion to crush me. Move aside. My voice was as cold as ice. Suddenly, a boy rushed forward from the crowd. Zhang Zhenjuan, the class's biggest sycophant. He pointed at my nose and yelled. Clara. Do you have no shame? It's not enough that you took Wendy's spot. Now you want to ruin her too? His words seemed to ignite a powder keg. And the crowd began to stir. Exactly. So disgusting. Someone like her deserves to be at Tingxua? Ugh. Cheating dog. I didn't know who pushed me first. But soon more hands and feet came at me. In the chaos, someone kicked me hard in the waist. And I stumbled into the wall. The sharp pain in my head, making me dizzy. Stop. The hotel security finally arrived and dispersed the crowd. I curled into a corner. And saw Wendy hiding behind Mom. A barely noticeable smirk on her lips. Check the surveillance. I gritted my teeth. Forcing myself up. I'll report this to the police. Someone deliberately hurt me. The next day, the police reviewed the surveillance footage from the exam hall. The clear footage showed that I had answered the exam independently. With no cheating behavior, public opinion began to reverse. Seems like she really earned her score. Then why did her mom and classmates report her? Thinking about it. Could it be school bullying? The barrage of messages cheered. Finally, heading for Sod Liab Sai. Someone sees the truth. Clara. Hang in there. We're all supporting you. My sister, realizing the situation was getting out of hand, suddenly began crying uncontrollably on her live stream. At this point, I have no choice but to tell the truth. The exam questions were leaked. She pulled out a crumpled piece of paper. This is my sister. She obtained the answers through improper means. The camera zoomed in on the paper scribbled with several math problems that had nothing to do with the exam questions. But once again, the netizens were swayed. What the hell? This is explosive. Selling herself for answers at such a young age? Disgusting. She should be banned from taking exams for life. I stood by the hotel room's floor-to-ceiling window, staring at the city lights flashing outside, while the screen of my phone buzzed with more and more hateful messages. This time, I felt an odd calmness. It's time. I whispered to myself. I opened the video app, started the live stream, and titled it simply, A Confession from the 725-point Student About the College Entrance Exam. My family. And the truth. Then, let out a little sigh. I shared the live stream to the class group and all my social media platforms. The moment the stream began, the viewer count shot past 10. 0 on screen. I appeared without makeup, my eyes slightly red from staying up late. Hello. Everyone. I'm Clara. My voice was soft, but surprisingly clear. First, I'd like to thank everyone who's concerned about this matter. The chat exploded with comments. Finally, heading Fulsteldme. She's responding. This cheater dares to stream. Hold on. Let's see what she has to say. I took a deep breath and pulled out a thick folder from my bag. These are all my notes, error books, and practice exams from my 3 years of high school. I flipped open a page filled with neat handwriting. Each page has a date, proving that these weren't forged on the spot. Next, I opened my phone gallery. This is the surveillance footage from my room. The screen showed my figure waking up at 4 a.m. every day to study. I installed this camera 6 months ago, because I found that someone had been moving my study materials. The viewers began to change their tune. Oh my god. The intensity of her studying. No wonder she scored 725. Wait. Who's been moving her materials? As for my sister Wendy. I clicked on another video. showing a hidden camera recording her desk drawer, which was packed with unopened workbooks and brand new notebooks. She doesn't even do the basic homework. The live stream viewership passed 100. 0. I dropped the next bombshell, regarding the alleged exam leak. The police have confirmed it's all a rumor. But I'd like to show you something even more interesting. I played the hidden recording from the KTV. The footage showed Wendy and Maggie discussing how they planned to fabricate evidence of my cheating. The viewers went completely wild. Holy crap. What a huge twist. This is a crime, right? Call the police. They need to be arrested. Just then, my door was suddenly slammed on. It was my mother. Screaming hysterically, "Clara! Open the door." I calmly pointed my phone toward the door. Would you like to see the true family dynamics? I then walked over and opened the door. Mom and my sister rushed in. My sister saw I was live streaming, and her face instantly turned ashen. "What are you doing?" Mom lunged at my phone. "Turn it off. Turn it off now." I swiftly dodged and held my phone high. "Mom, the entire country is watching. Don't you love being on camera?" Mom froze my jaw. Her face twisted in fury. You ungrateful wretch. I raised you. And now you're ruining your sister?" The comments on the live stream were flooding in. Is she going crazy? This is an outrage. Clara. Run. Suddenly, my sister kneeled, crying and pleading. "Sis. I was wrong. It was all Maggie's fault. She said if I didn't cooperate. Then what?" I asked coldly. "Then she'd expose your abortion in middle school?" The words hit like a bomb, shattering the room. My sister's expression froze. And my mom stood frozen, as if struck by lightning. Too much information. She had an abortion in middle school? This family is terrifying. You're lying. My sister screamed and rushed at me to grab the phone. I sidestepped, and she crashed to the ground. Mom finally snapped out of it, pointing at me and cursing. "You slut. Spreading rumors about your own sister. I should have strangled you when you were born." I stared calmly at the camera. This is my family. My voice trembled slightly, but it remained firm. My sister Wendy, in the 3rd year of middle school, got pregnant and had an abortion. My mom paid 50,000 to cover it up. Shut up. Mom grabbed a desk lamp and threw it at me. I couldn't dodge in time, and it hit my shoulder with a painful thud, making me gasp in pain. The live stream comments exploded. "Call the police. Hurry up. This is intentional injury. Poor Clara." I gritted my teeth, ignoring the pain, and continued, "But that's not the real revelation for today." I looked straight into the camera. I have evidence of my sister Wendy having an inappropriate relationship with several classmates. This is why so many of them worked together to frame me. Mom and my sister both froze. My sister realized what I meant, her eyes wide in terror. What are you saying?" I flashed her a smile, then played the final footage I had recorded that day in the KTV room. Mom screamed, a sound not even human, and rushed at me, shouting, "I'll kill you. I'll kill you. You dare ruin your sister." The live stream shook violently, and all the viewers could hear were the sounds of struggling and my sister's screams. It wasn't until the hotel security broke the door down that they were able to pull my mother off. I smoothed out my disheveled hair and faced the camera. This is the truth. The viewer count had surpassed 1 million. I finished. The college entrance exam is just the beginning. From now on, I will use the law to protect myself. Thank you to everyone who supports me. Goodbye. After the live stream ended, the police arrived. Mom and Wendy were taken for questioning, and I could finally breathe a sigh of relief. 3 days later, the Education Bureau issued a statement. My Gaokao score was confirmed to be legitimate, and Wendy and Maggie were under investigation for slander and fabricating evidence. Mom was sent to a mental hospital after repeatedly babbling about a system that could swap exam permits. The admissions office at Tingsha personally called to welcome me to the university. Yolanda and several other classmates stepped forward to testify, exposing Wendy's long history of bullying. The day before school started, I went to the mental hospital to visit Mom one last time. I stood up to leave. As I reached the door, I heard her final scream, "Clara, you won't have a good end." I didn't look back. The third day after the Gaokao results were announced, my phone was flooded with calls. Countless media outlets wanted to interview the student who had been falsely accused of cheating despite scoring 725. And my social media followers surged by 500. Zero overnight. I sat in the hotel room, watching the sunlight spill onto the carpet through the glass window. The live stream from 3 days ago was like a bomb, exposing the dark sides of our family, our class, having fulfilled my obsession, and even the entire school. My phone vibrated. It was a message from Yolanda. "Clara, Maggie was taken away by the police. Her parents are causing a scene at the school." A faint smile tugged at my lips as I replied, "She deserves it." I put my phone down and opened my laptop, beginning to gather the final pieces of evidence. The live stream was just the beginning. I was going to make everyone involved in this conspiracy pay. The class group chat had descended into chaos. People were leaving the group left and right. The classmates who had arrogantly supported Wendy and insulted me were now silent. I opened a video file. It was another clip I had secretly filmed at KTV. In the video, Maggie was speaking to several boys. "What are you afraid of? Didn't Mr. Lee from the homeroom class sleep with Wendy? Do you think he'll refuse to cooperate?" I took a deep breath and uploaded the video to the cloud. This was the final bomb, and I was going to detonate it at the right moment. The doorbell rang suddenly. I glanced cautiously through the peephole. It was Yolanda. "Clara." She rushed in, grabbing my hand. "Are you okay? The internet is going crazy." I shook my head. "I'm fine. Better than ever." Yolanda's eyes were red. I've always wanted to tell you. Many people in the class have been threatened by Wendy. She has dirt on everyone." "I know," I replied calmly. "Not just the classmates, but the teachers too." Yolanda gasped. How? How do you know?" I opened my laptop and showed her a surveillance video. The date showed it was the day before the midterm exams in our senior year. "Oh my God." Yolanda covered her mouth. This is disgusting?" I sneered. "This is just the tip of the iceberg." I continued flipping through the files, showing more evidence, a video of Wendy and Maggie bullying a younger student in the girls' restroom, chat logs of Wendy accepting bribes from boys to help them cheat, and even photos of her partying with gangsters outside of school. Yolanda suddenly burst into tears. "I'm so sorry. I should have stood up for you sooner." I patted her on the shoulder. "It's not too late now." Just then, my phone rang. It was an unfamiliar number. "Hello? Is this Clara?" A serious male voice asked. "Regarding the teacher misconduct issue you reported, we need your assistance in the investigation." A cold smile spread across my lips. "Of course. I'll cooperate anytime." After hanging up, Yolanda looked at me worriedly. "You're going to report Mr. Lee?" "Not just him." I opened the class roster. "Anyone who participated in the false testimony, no one will get away with it." The next day, I met with Brad, a man in his 40s with sharp eyes like an eagle. "Wendy, we verified the video you provided," he said, pushing a file toward me. "Mr. Lee has been suspended for investigation, but we need more evidence." I took a USB drive out of my bag. Here's the full video from December 15th last year, showing Mr. Lee with my sister in the teacher's lounge. And in March this year, there's a recording of him accepting bribes from parents to alter grades. Brady Ann's expression grew exceptionally serious. Did you collect all this by yourself?" "Yes, heading so website." I answered calmly. I originally just wanted to understand why my efforts were always dismissed, but I ended up uncovering so much filth. As I left the Education Bureau, the sunlight stunned my eyes. My phone vibrated again. It was from the hospital. Mom was causing a scene at the mental hospital, demanding to see me. I hesitated for a moment before calling a cab and heading to the hospital. The corridors of the mental hospital were always filled with the smell of disinfectant. Through the glass, hidden glass, I saw Mom restrained to the bed, cursing nonstop. Wendy suddenly went crazy this morning and injured two nurses. the doctor said helplessly. She keeps yelling that she wants to see you. I took a deep breath and pushed the door open. Slut. Mom struggled as soon as she saw me. You ruined everything. I stood by her bed, looking at her coldly. No. You ruined it yourself. Wendy is so brilliant. She should have been at Tsinghua. It's all your fault. All your fault. Mom screamed hysterically, saliva dripping from the corner of her mouth. The doctor quickly injected her with a sedative. Before the drug took effect, she suddenly quieted down, her eyes clearing. Clara. I was wrong. Please. Save Wendy. Then her eyes closed. I turned and walked out, meeting my aunt who had come to visit in the hallway. Clara. My aunt hesitated. Wendy has been taken away by the police. I nodded. I know. Aren't you upset? My aunt asked carefully. I looked out the window at the sunlight, softly saying, the days of sorrow are behind me now. A week later, the Education Bureau released a disciplinary notice. Mr. Lee, the homeroom teacher, was dismissed from his post and handed over to the judicial authorities. The 6 students who participated in fabricating evidence received demerit marks. Maggie was criminally detained for defamation and evidence forgery. My sister, Wendy, was detained for the same charges. And on the same day, my admission letter from Tsinghua University arrived at the hotel. I held the thin letter in my hands. And at last, the 3 years of endurance, pain, sorry, and struggle had borne fruit. The bullet comments danced cheerfully in front of me. Congratulations, Clara. End of hardships. New beginnings. A new life begins. I smiled as I closed the letter and began packing my luggage. The day before I left, Yolanda came to see me off. Are you really not going to forgive anyone? She asked quietly. I shook my head. It's not about forgiveness. It's about not wanting to entangle myself any longer. Some people, some things, should be let go completely. Yolanda bit her lip. Maggie. She asked me to convey her apology. She said she was also forced by your sister. I know. I interrupted her. But I won't forgive. Some wounds can't be erased with a simple apology. At the train station, people rushed by, and I dragged my suitcase toward the platform. Yolanda suddenly grabbed my arm. Clara. Thank you. If you hadn't stepped forward, we might have forever lived under Wendy's shadow. I patted her shoulder. Take care. As I turned to leave, I spotted a familiar figure standing in the distance. It was my sister. She wore a mask and a hat, her eyes looking at me with a complicated expression. We locked eyes for a second. Then I turned away and walked into the station without a second glance. As the high-speed train started, my phone buzzed. It was a text from an unknown number. Sis, I waved you. I hate you. I smiled faintly, blocked the number, and looked out at the rapidly retreating landscape. The past 3 years had been a nightmare. But now, I had finally woken up. The sky in Beijing was exceptionally blue. As I stepped out of the train station, seniors from Tsinghua University held up signs welcoming the new students. Are you a new student at Tsinghua? A senior girl with a ponytail asked me enthusiastically. I smiled and nodded. Yes, having fulfilled my obsession. I'm Clara. Her eyes suddenly widened. You're the one. The Clara who scored 725 on the college entrance exam? Nearby new students and their parents turned to look, some whispering to each other. I calmly nodded. Yes, and fulfilled my obsession. That's me. The senior excitedly grabbed my hand. Oh my God. We saw your story online. You're so brave. I smiled awkwardly. It's all in the past now. As we took a taxi to the university, the senior continued to praise me nonstop. I looked out at Beijing's towering buildings, feeling a strange sense of relief. My phone buzzed again. It was a message from Yolanda. Clara, Clara. Have you seen the news? Your homeroom teacher, Mr. Lee, was found to have inappropriate relationships with several students. And he's been arrested. Also, hadn't fulfilled my obsession. Maggie's parents are causing a scene at the school, claiming she's a victim too. I replied, good and evil will always be repaid. I set my phone down and took a deep breath. I knew that the story of my sister and me would be discussed for a long time, but that no longer concerned me. From now on, I am just Clara, an ordinary college student with a future full of possibilities. As for my sister Wendy, she will forever live in the shadow of the exam swap scandal, burdened by lies and disgrace, living a life that could have been brilliant and bright. That is the cost. That is justice. End of the story.